Hey, what's up? Welcome back to The Sound Table. I'm your host, Austin, and I'm joined by our co-host, Miranda.
Hello.
If you're watching this on YouTube, definitely make sure that you subscribe. We're still trying to grow this YouTube channel. We do these every other week. And if you're listening on podcast platforms, there are video versions now if you haven't checked that out. It's just at The Sound Table on YouTube. Just wanted to mention that before we dive into today's topic because we're still kind of seeing like a weird crossover. So we're still playing around with the idea of the video podcast, but y'all seem to like it, so we're going to keep doing it. And then other than that, that was really all the housekeeping that I had. Today, I think we're going to talk a little bit about like networking in the music industry, kind of like how to get your name out there, how to meet more people. I had a question when we did the Chapel Roan kind of inspired Leave Celebrities Alone episode. Right. And somebody DM'd me, I can't remember who it was, and I didn't go back and pull the message up, but they were essentially like, hey, what's your opinion on if you like see an artist going and like trying to tell them that like you're a producer that you're like a songwriter or that you're an artist and like trying to network with them. And I was like, the harsh reality is that, to be honest, most people do not care when they're out in public.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
I think that it can just put people in a little bit of an awkward position. And like, you don't know those people. Like, why would they collaborate with you? You're just a random guy off the street that was just like, oh, by the way, I produce music.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's not ever like a great way. And I was trying to say in that message to them that there are so many ways to kind of get your name out there, meet people, get into the room with people. And I don't really ever think that just like meeting somebody at a merch stand at their show and mentioning that you're a producer is ever really going to do much. I think it more so just like puts people in a weird position where they're like, oh, cool. But like,
yeah. Well, also I feel like if an artist came up to you and was like, oh, I'm an artist, like, would you want to be my producer? That you'd be like, what? No. Like,
yeah, I don't know you.
Yeah, you'd be like, go fill out a form, I guess. But like, so if the roles were reversed, I don't feel like you would care.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to like
no,
bring
it's
it up.
not.
I just don't think that it will ever yield a result.
That's what I mean. Like, I don't think it would yield a result for that artist coming up to you. So I think in that sense, you going up to a famous artist is like the chances are pretty low. But I mean, it doesn't hurt, I guess, to shoot your shot as long as you're not rude and like disrespecting people's space and their privacy and everything like that. I don't think it hurts if you're confident enough to do something like that.
And it depends on the level artist. They were talking about like if you walk up to like Olivia Rodrigo or somebody, it's like she's just gonna tell you to fuck off. Like,
well, and a lot of those people I feel like have artists.
They have their teams.
Producers, that they already love and they vibe with. So that is super difficult.
Yeah, you're better off getting in contact with like Dan Nigro and becoming boys with him.
Right.
Just so you can like accidentally get into a session. But we'll talk about all that in this episode. But I do think maybe that does work for somebody that you might go see at like a local venue who's like a local band. You can be like, oh, you guys are great. Like I checked y'all stuff out. By the way, I'm a local producer, so I don't know who y'all are working with right now, but like if you're ever busy or, you know, if they're not taking people, I'd love to work with you. Or if I can come to a songwriting session, like let me know. I'd love to link up.
Yeah.
But let's start going over, I guess that kind of segues us into like ways to actually, I guess like pitch yourself, but also just like kind of attract people to who you are and what you do. Because that to me is always kind of like I think like the easiest way to go about things is instead of like trying to promote, you more so just like showcase your skills and attract attention. And I think we should cover this in like levels, right? Like how do you find your first collaborator ever?
Yeah.
And then how do you find paying clients through and through? How do you do it in a local market? How do you do it online? How do you do it on like an industry level? And so we're going to kind of go over, in our opinion and in our experiences and experiences of people that we've seen do it, kind of how that all typically works out.
When he says our, he means his. I don't have experiences doing that.
You never know.
I could be a producer. You guys don't know. I could be a ghost producer.
Yeah, right? Let's start, I think, with just like diving right into like getting your first collaborators. Because that seems to be people's issue, right? I always tell people like, it's kind of a snowball effect of when you find one person to work with, you'll find 3, then you'll find 5, then you'll find 10. But it's hard to find that one.
Yeah.
And so I guess I'll kind of go over what I did and what I've seen other people do. For me, when I started producing, I was in a band, left that band, but then I was just like making music for myself. I didn't really start like really creating with other people. I do like little work for hire projects here and there. But I met a guy named Grayson who's now like, we've been best friends since 2014. And I met him because I was working at a bookstore. I was working at Barnes & Noble. He started working there and I was training him one night and telling him, you know, like I'm into music, I'm getting into music production. And he was like, oh, I'm, you know, play acoustic guitar. I've always wanted to like release a song. And so I was like, you know what? Just come over to the apartment one night. We'll order a pizza. We'll, open up a beer and crank out a song and see what happens. And I was like, I'm not going to charge you anything. You never have to put it out. If we like what we come up with, we can put it out and figure it out. We can collaborate more in the future. But this is more so for me to get my sea legs communicating with an artist, working with an artist. And for Grayson, it was a way for him to get his experience collaborating with somebody and not spending hundreds, if not thousands of dollars.
Yeah, but it was pretty like low stakes situation.
Exactly. And that's a method that I try to really preach is like, even if you're online, right? Like there's going to be some local artist in your area, whether it's somebody playing a cover bar at a gig or somebody that you see busking on the street or somebody that you find on Instagram. And it really is just about like making friends before you try to make clients or collaborators, because that whole night could have just gone completely awry. We could have ended with no song, but we had a great time doing it no matter what. We just like ate, hung out, drank a little bit. And by the end of the night, I was like, hey, I like what we came up with, but even if we came up with nothing, I had fun for the last 6 hours. And that is how I think people approach it more often.
No, totally.
And you just have to kind of like set your ego to the side, right? You have to like understand, I'm going to have to probably work for free. I'm going to have to probably get my own sea legs, figure out what I'm good at and what I'm not good at, because there was no way I was making Grayson pay me for that. I didn't even know if I'd be able to output a good song for him. I didn't know if we were going to have to send it off to mixing. I didn't know if we were even going to be able to track acoustic guitar at my apartment.
Or if you could like take what he was telling you and translate that into something
100%.
On a computer. Like, because you can do it yourself. Like if it's in your head, it's a lot easier. But when someone who's not a producer is trying to explain to you what it is, that seems a lot more difficult.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I tell people like, that's the difference between somebody who's really good at making a song and somebody who's a fantastic producer is how you can communicate that with an artist. And that's why you see people like DJ Khaled or Rick Rubin get those producer credits. It's even though technically they're not very skilled at the board or at the whatever, they can communicate ideas effectively. They can get shit done in the studio, and an engineer might not be understanding what the artist is saying, but then Rick Rubin can step in and give some weird general statement, and then it makes sense to everybody in the room. And that is a producer at the end of the day. It's somebody who like facilitates the record happening.
Yeah.
And until you work with people, you don't know if you're going to be good or bad at that. I know a lot of people that are amazing at producing for themselves and making records and can just output the most insane shit ever. And I've seen them try to work with paying projects, and every single time they're a nightmare. The communication is just hard for them. Timelines are hard for them. They don't find themselves like super inspired by whatever the artist who's paying them to do work is actually outputting. And like those are things that you have to learn, but it takes years, and it takes lots of people like Grayson coming in and trusting you, and you just kind of being like, let me do as much as I can for you. I'm not really expecting anything in return. Just be my crash test dummy. And so that's what I think people should do in their local market before they go trying to garner like a massive Instagram following or start a YouTube production channel or start, promoting your services on SoundBetter or on Fiverr. It's just like put in some time. I was producing for myself for years before that.
Yeah.
Like I was to the point where I knew that I could make good music for me. That was just my first time like doing it in a room with somebody else that wasn't a band member, wasn't me, like I actually wanted his input because it was essentially his output at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It wasn't my song.
But what about people who don't live in like a big city where they have things like that? Like what about people who live in smaller towns who don't have access to that? Well,
that's what I'm saying. I think even the smallest towns have somebody who plays acoustic guitar and sings at a bar. I think that...
But I'm talking like real small town, like rural, like...
Yeah, I mean, if that's the case, then I guess what you have to kind of do is...
Or if they're young, like if they're a teenager, you can't be having strangers come into or adults coming into your house, your parents' house. That's weird. Like,
I think it's just about finding... I want to say like a market, but more like a network of collaborators. They can be local, but they can also be online, right? Like if I live in the middle of Ohio and it's a population of 600 people in that town and there's nobody that can play an Ed Sheeran song on acoustic guitar. Like, don't waste your time on things that you don't see actual potential talent in, is essentially what I'm trying to say. But I think you can still follow that principle and do it online. You just might go have to work with a new artist that you just saw do an open verse challenge on Instagram from India, or you might have to go do, a mix for somebody who is self-producing for themselves in the UK. It's all about just like meeting people and meeting them without the intention of like ever making $1 off of them,
Right.
ever working with them. I feel like so many people kind of get themselves into a hole when they start because everything feels transactional. It's
yeah,
like,
for sure.
if I start talking to this artist, how long does it take to turn them into a paying client?
Yeah.
And that's such a fucked up way to think.
Yeah.
And it can just be exhausting. Like, I know so many artists and producers and engineers up to like the top level. And I never, ever expect that they'll work with me. It's nice that they give me time of day and they message me and they like my stuff and I can ask them questions and they're responsive. But like, I'm not expecting that they just invite me to their studio to work on the next record for like Post Malone or something.
Yeah.
You know, like, just because they might think that I'm talented and they might think that I'm good, they might not think that I'm a good fit to produce with them or to work with them.
Or they just might not be looking for that.
They might not be looking for that. They might not be in a position with those artists to be bringing in new people. And like, it happens all the way from small local levels all the way up to top 40 pop stars. You don't know who is already in whose camp. You don't know who is already comfortable with what workflow. And so it can be really essential to kind of find those artists that I think you can actually develop. I think when people are trying to get into producing full time, you should have at least one, if not like 3 artists that you are more so like trying to manage and develop. Like, you're not taking a managerial cut. You're not like making all of their decisions for them. But like, I think back to when I was getting started and like I had Grayson, I had Coda Milo, I had like several other people that I was just like, I'm cool working for you either for free or for so cheap that I'm barely breaking even, because I want your song to go get millions of streams. So then people hear that and I have a credit that I can be like, oh, I worked on this.
Right.
And for like the first year that I went full time, I made decent money. But it wasn't until like the 3rd year that I was full time that I was like, oh, I'm making great money very consistently.
But there was years of you doing that before you were full time.
Exactly. It was like when I really dove in full time, I already had a couple paying people here and there. I had already done projects. I had already seen that I could actually do it. But it's just one of those things of like, it sounds super unglamorous to get started and be like, oh, I have to go find a rapper on Instagram who has 85 followers, but like, don't worry about that. Worry about the raw talent, because if your raw talent and their raw talent sync up, then who knows what it could be. They might only ever get 10,000 streams on a song.
Yeah.
They might get 10 million. You literally don't know. And either way, it's a good way for you to sharpen your skills and them to sharpen their skills.
You almost have to be like an A&R when you first start and like try to find people who you think have potential. But I think that is a whole skill in itself. Like
100%.
It is hard, which I think if you are a producer, wanting to be a producer or whatever, like you probably do harness those skills to be able to see when you like, okay, I do see this person has potential. They have talent. So I do think that is like, goes together, but it is difficult.
I look at all of my favorite producers and I'm like, oh, they got started in like one artist camp that just got huge, right? You look at Elangelo and he was the Weeknd's producer from like day one. You look at like 40 for Drake. It was Drake's guy from like day one. You look at Max Martin, like Britney Spears and Backstreet Boys were nobodies when they were flying over to him in Sweden. They just develop all of these artists. And then naturally, when Bye 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 is the biggest song in the world and Max Martin's been doing it for 4 years, nobody really steps back and thinks like, oh, when he was working with Britney Spears, she was literally just like a random 16-year-old girl that had a budget because she got signed to a label because the label thought she was talented and she was pretty and she was marketable. And then they just found a random guy in Sweden who was making metal music.
Right.
Like, nobody really, I think, traces producers back to say, like, 40 got his big break because Drake got his big break. Elangelo got his big break because The Weeknd got his big break.
But they also took their producers with them, which I think is very notable and, like,
for sure,
super cool that they did that.
100%.
I'm sure there are a lot of artists who had producers when they first started, and now that they're huge, they don't talk to them anymore. So,
yeah,
it's definitely, that's like, those are like, I think, very unique situations too.
But I think that you can still apply that principle
100%.
to any level.
Yeah,
like,
100%.
I think that it's just good to kind of get your reps in with an artist that you know you're going to be happy with, like what they output.
Well, and
right?
those are 2 examples of people making the right decision, of seeing these 2 artists that they're like, they have real potential to be huge. And then they look at them now. They are huge, and so are the producers. So it really worked out for them.
So I think that's kind of how I would start, like trying to get your first batch of collaborators, is like, don't worry about the money. Don't worry about the credits. Don't worry about who's even going to hear it. Just work on getting finished songs. I have had so many people in my goddamn DMs that ask me how to go full time. And I asked them to send me 5 completed songs that they've done and released. They don't even have it.
Yeah, that's
crazy to me.
That is crazy.
Like, I'm sorry, you're not there yet. Like, it's going to take years of practice until you can really even get something that you feel comfortable releasing.
Yeah.
And then once you release it, it takes several of that to really just kind of find your bearings and see, here's what's good, here's what's bad, here's what I need to work on, here's what people are fucking with, here's what nobody likes.
Yeah, it's almost like, which I'm going to sound like a boomer, so please bear with me. It's almost like with the accessibility to all this stuff, and then with something like TikTok where random things do blow up and go super viral, it makes people think, well, that could be me, which it could be you. But like you can't expect.
It's probably not going to be.
Right. The chances are so low. But like not even that, but you just can't expect that to be you when you haven't even released 3 songs, like, or have 3 productions under your belt that are fully done, developed, put out in the world. Like the chances of that are so low. It's like every artist that says, like, again, quoting Chapel, but I feel like she just has so many nuggets. She's such a good attitude, I feel like, on her fame and like this sudden rise that she's getting. But anyhow, she said everyone's going to say, industry plant. But what you see now as an overnight success is actually 10 years of work.
Yep.
And that I think is so true. Like even you have been producing for so long now, and it's still like people, like you have something like big happen, and then people are like, oh wow, yeah, like he just kind of blew up. And it's like, no, you've been working at this for so long. And
for
the people
sure.
that you work
with.
with.
If I did a Dua Lipa song, hundreds of thousands of more people would now know my name and be like, he fucking came out of nowhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they don't know you until they know you.
Exactly. That's why it cracks me up when people say industry plant. I'm like, you don't know every artist of ever.
Yeah.
And like also with virality of things, it's very possible that people do blow up overnight, but it's also possible that people have been making music for a long time and then all of a sudden they're famous. But anyway.
Even the people that I know personally that went mega viral and like ended up having careers off of a couple viral songs. Like you look at Trevor Daniel, you look at Knox, you look at like even some of my friends who have like YouTube videos that have gone viral, like Alina. You look at all of them and it's like, oh, Sneakers by Knox might have gone viral on TikTok, or Falling by Trevor Daniel might have gone viral on TikTok, and now that's made careers for them. Both of those people were in the scene 10 years before that.
What about Knox? He's so young.
He's 26. He's been writing with people
for a long time at least.
Yeah, but he's been making music for a while.
Yeah.
And like,
but years.
He'd been working with Cam for a while on stuff that like hadn't produced or hadn't released or whatever. And like nobody knows. Like that's the problem. Is like
no one sees all the you don't want to see all like the behind the scenes that goes on, because it's not pretty and glamorous and like idealized of what you want it to be. It's like no one wants to see all that.
So like we had Joan on the podcast as like our first guest ever a couple years ago, and they were telling us how weird their story was, because they were like, our first song ended up doing numbers, we got a management deal off of it, it ended up being one of our biggest songs to date, and we just got really lucky. But they were both in bands before that. They had both been doing music for years before that, releasing multiple songs, self-producing, doing music in their church. Like that was not just because it was Joan's first song and Joan's first song did really well. That was not Alan and Steven's first song.
Yeah.
That was them after 8 years of putting in sweat equity every day.
Yeah. But I think people too being able to still coast off of that one success is impressive, because one hit wonders, at least like 20 years ago, 15 years ago, were such a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like Vanessa Carlton with her 1,000 Mile song. That song was huge. And I don't feel like she was a huge success after that. She probably had a couple, I'm sure, but like not five, like a couple of years later, no one knew her except for that one song.
I think that comes in because it's more people now that are blowing up are independent, at least at first, until they then go and get, like, look at that band Daydreamers, right?
Well, also
like,
that, but I'm saying like with Instagram and everything like that, with social media, it is harder to be like, oh, but they were a thing and now they're gone, because it's like you're kind of in everybody's face all the time.
Yeah, as long as you're still making stuff and having output, like...
And you're like super talented, which not that Vanessa Carlton isn't, because she is, but I just think back then it was a lot harder to keep that momentum going. I think now artists are showing like, yeah, you can have one song blow up, but you can keep that, like riding that wave if you really work really hard and try.
Right. Like maybe the next one might not get close to 1 billion streams, but it'll get 100 million.
Yeah.
And like I can live off of that.
Yeah. And then you have a more dedicated fan base that can follow you, instead of back then when it's like, yeah, I like that one song, but what else are you going to do besides buy that one single or that one album, and then you're going to forget about it because they're not going to be marketing her. You can't
hear it on the radio every day.
Yeah. You can't follow her on Instagram. You can't like keep track of what she's doing. So it's like, I think now with Instagram and TikTok, that is like a positive.
Yeah, there is that immediate like, oh, I like this, I can follow them and like stay up to date. Or like you hear a song on the radio in 2003 and you're like, oh, hopefully I hear another one from them on the radio in 6 months. And if you don't, then you don't.
You probably don't even remember. You probably don't even think about it.
Literally. But I guess back onto the topic of like networking and stuff.
Oh yeah, we went
on a little bit of a tangent. But
it goes together.
Yeah, I think it's ultimately like, I do think a lot of people try to skip out on some of the sweat equity because it does seem like a lot of people just get like famous overnight or get successful overnight. And like maybe some do. It's so rare that like, I think you do a disservice to yourself if that's what you're doing.
Your like goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, let's talk about like networking in like a little bit bigger sense where like, let's say you're like, you know, you have some stuff out, you can kind of like steadily get work for hire stuff here and there. But like, how do you get into that next echelon, right? Like, how do you start working with like the bigger indie artists and like the smaller labels? And this is where I think the kind of conversation will be similar for artists who are listening to this and producers listening to this. And that's like, once you've put in the time and developed your skills enough to where like you're getting it out in the world, you've kind of got your workflow, then it does become about attracting people with whatever you're outputting. So if you're an artist, you need to be releasing music really regularly. You need to be making your content on TikTok and on Instagram and on YouTube, and not just making content for the sake of it, but make content that's interesting, make content that adds to your art. We talked about that in a whole content episode like a couple months ago. So go listen to that episode if you want to see like different ideas for making content. But even as a producer, right? Like even before I had the channel, I was making good money, great money producing for 100% freelance people. I would say most people that were working with me were only getting 5 to 20,000 streams on their songs, but they were happy with it. I was happy with it. And it just was what it was. I put in a lot of time, worked on a lot of music that most of the world will never hear. And that's fine. It was my sacrifice. I didn't start getting all of the bigger connections until the YouTube channel started getting really big and the Instagram started popping. And I had one fucking reel on Instagram do really well randomly. It was a whatever reel. I've talked about it before on here. And from that one reel, like 10 top 40 producers followed me, and like they would have never seen me because of the small work that I produce. And like, those are the things that you have to take your chances on. Right. You have to put it out into the world, and you have to be okay with this reel only getting 85 views and this reel only getting 200 views and this reel only getting 1,000 views. And then boom, you have the one that gets 600, 700,000 views. You get, 4,000 followers from that. And out of those 4,000 people, maybe there's 5 or 6 in there that are important people in the industry who then link up with you.
I remember that reel, and you were like, why is this reel doing so? Like I knew when you made it, you were like, this reel's super important. Like, I think it'll be super useful. I hope people like it. And then, but a lot of time when that happens, like he makes a reel that he's like, or a video, he's like, I think this video turned out so well. Like, this is such useful information. I hope people like it. And then it normally doesn't perform as well as you would hope. Like you personally would hope.
Yeah.
And then that one went just absolutely crazy. And and you were like, it's probably going to be the same thing. Like, it's going to be super useful information, but it's not going to get a lot of views. And then like Shaq shared it on his Instagram story.
It had been out for like over 24 hours and it had done like 5,000 views, which is very whatever it's like average for our Instagram reels. I was like, cool, it did fine. And then literally we went to like the wine shop that we go to, and I checked it at the end I was like on Instagram at the end of the night, and I was like, why does this have 60,000 views?
Yeah.
And then the next day it had 200, and then the next day it had 400,000.
Yeah, it just kept climbing.
And from that one little moment, I do weekly reels, I do weekly content on Instagram, and from that one little moment, I met literally dozens of people that hopefully I get to work with one day. And if I don't, at least I get to say like, oh, they know who I am. They've heard my music. Maybe I'll get an opportunity. And that is what it's about. It's about putting in the time, putting in the reps, and then hoping one day you get in front of the right people. It's the same for artists. You never know when an A&R is going to come to your show, or when an A&R is going to stumble upon your content. Yeah. So everything that you do needs to be to display who you are, what you do, and how good you are at what you do. Because even when I meet young producers who I hire to help us with sample packs, or I send projects out that I can't work on myself because I'm too busy, I find those people from going on our Facebook group and just like posting something that they're working on and being like, hey, I just need feedback on this. And I listen to it and I'm like, they don't need feedback. This is fucking fire. And then I add them to a little document that I have. And one day I will DM them and try to give them some kind of opportunity. And that's coming from me, a small producer, but to producers who are significantly smaller than me. And that happens on all levels, but it only happens if you put yourself out there. You really focus on like, not just making content, but delivering content that really highlights you. And like showcases you. That's why I hate even calling it content. It's more like a showcase. Like,
I think showcase sounds worse.
You do?
Yeah, I think it sounds more like not frivolous, but like
intended.
Yeah.
Okay, I feel
because
that.
I think with whatever content you're putting out, I think the number one thing is if you're genuine with it, people will be able to tell. Like most people, like over the age of like 22, like I feel like most adults, you can, not that you're not an adult, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You can tell a lot of the time when content's not genuine or when someone's like putting on a personality for the camera.
Yeah, I guess what I more so meant was like just keep the attention to detail. Like don't put shit out just for the sake of putting shit out.
No, totally.
And like that's fine. You can have like the funny little reels or whatever that are like not for your audience.
Yeah,
but like,
you do that sometimes. It's like not like, or just like funny little shit posts. Like that's fine sometimes, but maybe not all of the time.
That's not where I'm getting opportunities from.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying like make sure what you're doing is genuine, you're passionate about it, and you stand behind it 110%.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, people are going to see through it, but also I don't think it's going to perform as well when you're bullshitting your way into everything.
Yeah, and like the numbers just don't convert. Like,
exactly,
you might have a reel that gets 1 million views because you made a funny meme, but like I don't think that that's going to turn into projects hiring you. I don't think that that's going to turn into important people following you and texting you. Like you kind of will have to decide really early on in your journey, like, do you want to be a numbers person or do you want to be like quantity or quality? Right? Like, do you want your reel to get 1 million views or do you want your reel to bring you 3 people that could maybe work on a big record with you? Because they're not always going to be created the same. If you just want views, you can post easy content all day long and get the reels. And sometimes those are good for bringing in like general people who can follow you.
Or
like,
just if you like them and you think that they're funny, I think they're good for that reason too.
Like we have friends that own a clothing company called Lost Bros, and they make a lot of reels that are very intentional to promote their shirts, and they're very based around that. But sometimes they'll just post like a little shit post, funny little meme, and just passively wear their shirts. And Cody, one of the owners of it, was telling me, he was like, I'm fine with if we just make a shitpost reel in Disney, if it gets 700,000 views, but it doesn't sell a lot of that t-shirt, at least that brings in people to follow us. So then when we do promote ourselves, like it'll hit them. And that's one way of thinking. But
and it's
then
a good way to show your personality too.
100%. But then you still have to have the part that's like, no, here are the t-shirts that we make and this is how we make them and it's why we make them. And it's like a weird balance when you make content or try to network with people of showcase your skills, but don't, yeah, you're right. Don't just like showcase everything. Try to like be a person and more so just like.
Try to be a person. Don't be a robot, you guys.
Yeah,
try
literally. I guess it's just more like try to show your value as often as possible.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying like I think, which I do think it's hard to show your personality on camera. Like it is uncomfortable. Like I'm not someone who's ever been on camera until this podcast.
Yeah.
So I get it. Like it's difficult and it's a little uncomfortable and it is something you have to get used to. And I can't imagine in something like a 30-second reel, that seems even harder to have to put your whole personality into 30 seconds, which you're not going to be able to do. But I do think it is important to be able to show little parts of yourself in everything that you do, because I think it makes people remember you more instead of just like, oh, that one tip that I heard, they know who it's coming from because of your personality or the way that you do things or whatever it is.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. I think what it really comes down to is like so many people try to network so strategically and it becomes less about just like make connections with people, make friends with people.
That's what I'm saying.
I think I said it earlier, but like I have so many friends in the industry that like I would love to work with, but I'm never going to just like keep pushing myself. They know who I am. They know that I produce. And if they need something, they can come to me, but I'm not going to just keep fucking hounding them on like, when are we going to work on something? When are we going to do something? They're just going to get tired of you and cut the ties no matter what. So just make friends with people. And when you're in the right place at the right time, you might get invited to a session. You go to LA for something, you might have somebody say, oh, you're in town, pull up and co-write for XYZ. Oh, you're in Nashville, pull up and co-write for XYZ. That's how you get into those rooms, not by fucking pestering people and like overly promoting yourself and overly selling yourself to people. You meet them because they discover you, they link with you, you click, maybe talk for years and years and years. And then finally the opportunity comes up and you collaborate. And sometimes it's a good fit. Sometimes it's not a good fit. And y'all are still friends after that. But like, it's very rare that you're just going to literally have somebody reach out to you on Instagram and be like, your stuff is so good. Come to Nashville and co-write with me.
Yeah, that's like, so rare.
You have to meet them. You have to know them. You just have to like.
Well, you've said so many times that like sessions are like about vibes.
100%.
And like the energy. And if people don't, like, you're not going to get along with everybody. Just like, so everyone's not going to, you know, not everyone's personality is going to gel.
Yeah.
So like, that's why it's so important to showcase that. So then people might get an idea of how you are.
Sure.
And then you go to a session, you all gel, you get along, it's great. And then word of mouth comes a thing. Because then, let's be real, like a lot of these people, especially in like Nashville, I feel like
Nashville,
really a
LA,
tight-knit community.
100%.
So if you go in one session and they're like, oh, this guy's great. And then that person's talking to their friend about it. And then, word of mouth gets around. And then everyone realizes, oh, this guy actually is a good hang.
Yep.
He is useful in sessions. Or it could be the opposite. And when if they don't.
Could be.
But I doubt that highly, highly.
2 years ago, I didn't really know anybody in Nashville. And if I were to fly to Nashville next week, I could, within like an hour, probably have 10 sessions to go to in a couple days.
Anytime he ever talks about Nashville, you're getting people that are like, oh, we should do something if you come here.
But it's because I've put in time getting to know these people over years, not just saying like, oh, can I produce your next album? Oh, can you guest list me to your show? Like, just like you don't know these people yet.
I think people some of these like gurus, quote unquote, on Instagram or YouTube treat working with people as numbers instead of as people, and they're viewing them as dollar signs.
Transactional as shit.
Exactly. And that is, I'm sure that works for some people and like that's fine, but that's not going to get you there in the long run. Like you have to build relationships with people. You have to be genuine because people see through that bullshit so easily.
Yeah.
And if you think that they don't and you think that you're tricking them and you're like, no, like they don't. No, they know. They know. Trust me.
I can immediately tell when somebody DMs me if they want something.
That's
and
what
like,
I'm saying.
then it just becomes a weird vibe.
I'm
like, what the fuck do you want? Like,
yeah, exactly. It's like you're not slick. Stop trying to, don't listen to these weirdos who are like, no, this is what you got to do. Like, do this and then you do this and then no, it's nothing is that simple. If anything was that simple, everyone would be successful. Everyone would, like, every diet that everyone did would be successful. Like, it's not how the world works. Anyone who's selling you this bullshit of do this one thing and then you do this other thing and you're going to get the result you want. It's such a lie. It is such a scam. People are taking advantage of you, of your, like, because everybody wants to be successful in what they do. And people know that. And that's why they have these get rich quick things when it's like, or get in industries quick. It's not a thing.
They take one anecdotal time that it happened and try to turn it into a formula.
Exactly.
And like,
you can
I
do
think
that with anything.
That's why we don't talk about like networking a ton with like make pop music and stuff or like marketing. It's because like there's not a right and a wrong way to do it. Like I've seen people treat marketing so irresponsible and get massively famous, and I've seen people overanalyze it and never get more than 100 followers. And like I think that it's hard to compete. We said this about our courses, but like it's hard for us to compete when we're trying to be honest and being like, you know what? You might have to work in your local market for 3 years and never make $1 off of it.
Exactly.
Because that's so fucking unsexy to people.
That's
people
what I'm
want
saying.
that like packaged like, you can do this every day and then you can do this every day and then you can sign up for Sound Better and do this and then you can go to Fiverr and do this and then you can go to a studio and become a runner and then you can work on the next Akon record. And it's like, what the fuck? Like that's not...
It's a pipe dream.
Yeah, maybe that works for some. Maybe some people do graduate high school, go to Full Sail, go run at East West Studios, become an intern there, become an assistant engineer there, then an engineer, then a producer, then whatever.
Yeah, there's no way it hasn't worked for some people.
It's working for some. Even the people it did work for, it took 10 years. And a lot of right time, right place kind of things. But this is not like a super... It might even sound pessimistic to some people. Like some people might be listening to this and be like...
It's just not black and white. And I think people want it to be and think that it is. But it's unfortunately not. Like... I think that's the whole like theme of this is how unglamorous it all is, and
100%.
The long hours of hard work, the no pay that you get in order to get where you want to be in your career. It's unfortunate and it sucks that that's the way it is, but that is the way it is.
Yeah. I was just thinking, and I was like, I kind of have a perfect example for a very specific person who we met when I was definitely a couple levels above them. And then like, I've kind of like just really connected with them over the years. And now like, we're just so close. And it's our friend Ash Taylor. He's worked with us on sample packs and preset packs. And he just released his own preset pack. Actually, if you're watching this, go buy the new Bratty pack. It's like a whole Charlie XCX sample pack. It's super fire. But anyway, the reason that we ever even connected was because one Christmas, his partner bought him a couple of our sample packs and like hand drew the boxes, and it was such a sweet gift. His partner messaged Miranda and like told her everything.
Ash messaged me.
Oh, Ash ended up messaging her.
Yeah, he was like, look what my partner gave me for Christmas. And I was like, that's the cutest thing I've ever seen in my life.
And so, yeah, we were just like, that's so cute. That's so sweet. And then I think Ash hit me up and he was like, oh, can I, once I use these and some things, can I like send them to you so you can check them out? And a lot of the time I'll tell people like send them. I don't always have time to listen to everything that everybody sends me. But on that day I was just like, yeah, for sure. Like,
this was also years ago.
Your partner bought the samples. I would love to hear how you utilize them. Like, it was such a nice gift. We were real small at the time.
This was like 3 years ago, I think. Maybe even like 4
or 5 years ago.
We didn't have the website 5 years ago.
Yeah, we did.
Beginning of, oh yeah, no, you're right. Okay, so then
it was a long time ago.
Yeah, maybe 4.5 years.
Anyway, Ash sent me a song and I was like, this is actually really great. Like, this is so cool. I got Ash into the Facebook group if they weren't already. I think he was. But I was like, oh, here's our Facebook group, yada, yada. Like, send me more stuff when you make it. And then Ash would just like make things, tag me in things, whatever. And it was never like annoying or spammy. I don't think Ash was ever trying to like get me to send him clients or hire him or whatever. It was more so just like, hey, like, check this out when you have time. Or like, oh, I really like that new thing that you did. And just, sending me little compliments. And I have this relationship with tons of people, lots of our customers, lots of my peers in the industry. It's great. A lot of the time it just kind of blossoms into nothing more than like a cool little Instagram association. But sometimes it does. And with Ash, it kind of, I saw that he was like working on samples and presets and like it was kind of lining up with us that we needed some help on a preset pack. And I was like, oh, if I were to hire you, like, what are your rates? So he gave us some rates and we hired him for a first batch of presets for, I think, Spectrum at that time. And then Ash started, like getting into freelancing. And at the time I was getting so many inquiries that I couldn't take because they either didn't have the budget or I didn't have the time, but they were in Ash's budget and Ash was a great producer. And so I have like a whole little network of people where it's like, hey, if I can't work with you, go try them. If I can't work with you, go try them. And Ash got added to that network, got a few paying clients, ended up like, I think, quitting his job and then started releasing his own sample packs. And like, I'm not a very competitive person in the market. So I was telling people about those. Ash came and did a collab pack with us that made him a ton of money called The Wave. And like all of that literally just started from him thanking us for making samples. Yeah. And him just being like, if you ever want to hear how I use them, let me know and I can send something over.
I feel like Ash owes it all to Ben, really, is what I'm thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, Ben hooked it up. But like, that's why I think that stories on how to make it are so funny because that's so anecdotal that like if somebody were to ask Ash like, oh, how do you make a living as a producer? And Ash were to say like, oh, I sell samples and I do productions. Like nobody's ever going to be in that exact same position where they find somebody that has, some more followers and a couple more connections and just like accidentally slides into the door. And that happens with everybody smaller than me that meet people bigger than me. Like, that was just one specific story about, I don't think he really ever expected that. I never expected that.
No, definitely.
I never expected, like the artists that I work with a bunch, Riley. Like, I never expected to literally just like see an artist that I like who had 15,000 followers on Instagram and a couple 100,000 monthly listeners, ask for producers, and then me send him some stuff and him immediately hire me and then work on literally dozens of songs now. Yeah. And now he's connected me with all of his friends who are big artists. We get to go to shows that he's tour managing all the time and meet all these artists. I've met the guys in Half Alive. We just met Garrison from the band Camino. And like I meet all of them through Riley, like the Chase Atlantic guys. Like I know Christian from Chase Atlantic now through Riley. And like I've gotten opportunities for that. And like all of that happened because I stumbled upon one fucking Instagram story one day.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And that will happen dozens of times in someone's career. And that's why I think that there is no big formula on how to network. And it really does all just boil down to like, put yourself out there, be a good hang, try to provide value. Don't see everything as transactional. Don't always think like, what can they do for me? Because I've also met a lot of people who I enjoy, but they've never really done anything for me professionally. That's fine. They're just my friends. I wouldn't expect, our friend Gage from the wine shop to like do anything for me professionally. You just meet somebody and you're like, oh, they're really nice and they're cool. I think so many people are like, yeah, but like, if I go to a show, what if I meet all these people and then like, none of them even hire me? Like, don't even fucking go to the show at that point. Like,
well, yeah, I think that's people's problem. That's what I'm saying. People always seeing people as dollar signs instead of just trying to make connections with people. That's why I was like, I'm going to sound like a boomer, but it's just true. It's unfortunately just true. I mean, I don't think that's unfortunate. I don't think you should make relationships with people and have interactions with people in the hope of getting something out of it. I think that's kind of icky way to live your life. Like, no, don't do that. But
it also too is just like networking is important, but it's also a right place, right time thing.
100%.
Like, look at somebody like Dan Nigro, who definitely had a publishing deal. He was in a band in the 2000s, like an alternative band that was great.
I always forget that.
Definitely had a sound. But then he got on a publishing deal and got sent this little nobody artist named Olivia Rodrigo and made a teeny bopper ballad with her. And then it went mega viral, got billions of streams, and then started working with Chappell Roan, then started working with Conan Gray, then started working with literally a whole slew of like Gen Z's it people. And all of that started because he was in the right place at the right time, did a good job on her first couple records. And then it's very clear that he just has a good vibe. The people that work with him are so comfortable working with him.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's one thing that people don't want to tell you is that unfortunately a lot of it is just a right time, right place, right time kind of situation.
Yeah.
Or getting lucky. Like people don't want to be honest and tell you that because they can't sell things and make money off of you from telling you the truth of it being luck and it being, and some of it's not all luck. It's not all right place, right time. That's for sure. But that's definitely a factor in it somewhat.
I think that if you look at people on the highest level, there is nobody on the highest level that wasn't right place, right time with luck.
Exactly.
However, they were very prepared and they had put in the work and the sweat equity and the hours. So when the right time and the right place and the right opportunity approaches, they can strike on it.
They could take
because
advantage,
I see a lot of people fucking blow a lot of opportunities because they try to go somewhere that they are really not supposed to be yet. And then they get an opportunity and they drop the fucking ball and nobody ever wants to work with them again. They get a weird vibe. They get a weird reputation because they just weren't ready. They're not a bad person. They just couldn't capitalize when it mattered the most. They might get asked to send a beat pack for Lil Nas X and then they just never send one. And then now they're never going to get a cut. And like, that's what's so important. That's why I tell people, don't worry about the making money on music. Don't worry about how many streams you're going to get on a song that you produce. Make music, put it out there, work on your skill, work on your craft, be a good person. And when the right opportunity strikes, try to think that you've done everything in your power to be prepared for that, because that's the worst when people got opportunities and then are just not ready for them. And some people will put in the work and the sweat equity and honestly may never get the opportunity.
That's why I'm saying like no one wants to tell you that and be like, oh, it is, some of it is
it's a gamble.
Luck. Yeah. And right place, right time, because it's not glamorous. It's not pretty. No one wants, and it's discouraging a little bit. We are like, oh, I could work my ass off my entire life, my entire career, and then still not get anything because I wasn't in the right place at the right time. And it's like, unfortunately, that is the
100%.
risk.
And
that's
I think
the risk with this kind of job.
People get confused because they think, you know, what if, you know, if I work my ass off, Chappell Roan worked her ass off for all those years. Taylor Swift worked her ass off when she was a teenager. Olivia Rodrigo worked her ass off going from Disney to, you know, and it's like, yeah, but they didn't get successful only because they worked their ass off. They got successful because they did that and got very lucky, got very fortunate, right place, right time, knew the right people. So many people are like nepotism babies that you have no idea about. Like, you just never, ever know. You could meet somebody grocery shopping at Walmart and you could just like accidentally run into them and tell them who you are and what you do. And they could ask for, you know, your website or your portfolio. And then all of a sudden you didn't know that, but they were an A&R at Atlantic Records and now they're flying you out to LA next week. It probably will never happen, but it could. So you need to be prepared. And that's why I tell people like, put your stuff out in the world. Have a website where people can find you. Have socials where people can find you. When people want to contact you, don't make it hard for them to fucking contact you. Like, I just think that networking is so much less about like, how can I convince these people to respond to my DM? And it's so much more about like, I just need to put myself out there. And when they DM me, I need to respond.
Yeah. It's all about like taking your shot when you can. I think having a good personality also helps a ton. Having good energy and obviously skill, because you're not going to get anywhere if you're not talented. And
just perseverance, like not getting bitter and run down when like you put in the time for years and like things haven't happened. Like honestly, sometimes I think and I'm like, I feel like I should be farther in my career right now. Like I feel like I know the right people. I feel like I do the right level of work. And like that opportunity, frankly, just hasn't happened for me yet. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. I'm very proud of where I am. We live a very comfortable life. Make Pop Music does really well. I do tons of productions. We make sample packs that are used on some of the biggest songs in the world. And I'm so proud of that. I'm so happy with that. But if you would have asked me 5 years ago, I would have thought like, oh yeah, by 2024 going into 2025, I should have like a big major label top 100 cut. And you know what? That didn't happen.
But
Maybe that didn't happen because I didn't want to
over.
keep flying out to LA and working on projects. Maybe if I would have taken more risk, I could have. Maybe if I would have put myself out there, I could have. But it's all kind of just like a moot point because it doesn't
not over, baby.
matter.
You don't know.
That's true. But like, it's all kind of like ifs, ands, and buts. Like you can't spend your whole life thinking about would have, could haves, and should haves of your career.
Yeah. I actually heard an actor one time, I forget who, maybe Jenna Fisher, but I don't remember. They were talking about how being an actor is getting told no like 1,000 times practically.
It's 99% no.
Yes, like you have to have such perseverance in that career because most of your career is getting told no, not getting told yes. And I think being an artist, being a producer is the exact same thing. Like most of it is getting told no, you don't get to do this opportunity, you don't get to, work with this person, whatever. But it's those rare yeses that you have to like keep striving for and keep having the tenacity to work towards, because it is hard to keep that energy up when you are getting told no all the time.
And at the end of the day, I think that's why it is so important to just genuinely love it and not do it for the fame and the money.
Exactly.
Because we've talked on this podcast before about a lot of people seem to want to do music because they think it's lucrative or they can get famous or they can work from home
or they can
whatever.
make a lot of money.
And like, that's just not, maybe you end up doing that, but like, I don't think that you're going to stick in it long enough to really like tough out most of the dumb shit that you have to go through in this industry
totally.
To ever make more than like a couple $1,000s if you don't absolutely love it. Like I'm obsessed with music, and even if nobody ever hired me to produce a song again, I wouldn't sell all my gear. I would keep whatever gear I could afford to keep, and I would make music forever because I do that. It's my hobby, it's my passion, it's my life, it's how I express myself, and I'm very fortunate that I accidentally turned it into a career. However, the monetary value that I've made through music, it does not correlate with the value that I put on music itself.
Right.
It's just not, that's not how I view music. That's not how I view songwriting. It's not how I view producing. Like at the end of the day, yeah, I want to get paid for my shit. Like this is my living now. So like I have to, step in and collect business, but like, that's not what it's about for me. Like I still find small artists all the time that I work with for free or for way less than my normal rate. Because I'm like, oh, they're just fire. And like, I just kind of want to work with them and I'm going to do it. I make stuff for myself that maybe never even releases that I go listen to years later because I enjoyed making it. And if you're not,
most of the stuff you make for yourself.
And if you're not that kind of person, don't fucking bother. Like literally don't bother. Just don't ever get more than a laptop and an interface because you're just going to be bitter about all the never worse.
I just don't think it's an industry that you get in, like, it's not for the
faint of heart.
Yeah, it's not. I've said this before, but it's not an industry for making money.
No,
like you can make a lot of money, like these huge artists are making, sure, but that is,
and it really depends on just your business plan.
And that's like the 1% though. That's like thinking because you open a business that you're the CEO of a business, you're gonna become a billionaire. Like, no, there's so many businesses where people are barely breaking even, but they're still CEOs. It's those 1% that are, multimillionaire billionaires. It's the same thing with artistry, producing. It's like, it's not something that getting into for just money is not the wisest decision.
Yeah. And like, to be honest, you never even know financially what it's looking like for people, because I have friends who have huge, like literally you walk in their living room and you're like, why do you have 6 platinum records on your wall? And they're struggling to pay their rent.
Yeah.
They'll never own a house, at least not at this point in their life. They're driving a 12-year-old car. They, kind of eat what they can when they can. And then you look at us and we have a nice suburban house. We just bought a new car. We live really great. I'm not doing major records though, but I can stay consistent because I'm self-managed. I'm independent. We have the YouTube channel. We have the sample packs. And somebody might look at me and might say, Austin didn't work on that massive record. He must not be making a good living producing. And XYZ did that massive record. They must be fucking rolling in dough. And you just never know. There are people who are much less public than me in the music industry who make far more money, millions of more dollars than me. And there are people who are much more public and much more in your face and much more seemingly successful than me that are probably struggling to pay their bills. And you just never know. That's why I think it's so important to just like keep your head down, focus on what your goal is. Do you want to reach as many people as possible, or do you want to be as financially stable as possible? They might be different. Do you want to work on hundreds of projects a year, or do you want to focus on developing artists and working on a couple albums a year with a couple different people. It's just, that's what you have to keep in mind too when you network is like, what are your goals? Like, how many people can you realistically spread yourself between? Like, I don't know. I think at the end of the day, it really just does come back to like, stop treating every relationship as like transactional. Stop thinking that people owe you an opportunity. Stop thinking that one day your whole world is just going to get solved because somebody says, hey, send in this record for Bruno Mars. Like, it's just probably not going to happen.
Yeah. Relying on other people for your success is not long-term a good idea. It's because the chances like are just not low. You got to do it yourself. Yep. And you totally can, but don't listen to these people who are selling you this pipe dream of if you listen to me and do this one thing and then this other thing, you will for sure be no one can guarantee you success.
If you release 3 or 4 reels per week for 1 year and you can target this demographic with this ad, it's like...
Making shit mathematical is just not how it works. And
to be honest, if you want to be that focused, get a fucking manager to handle all that for you. Like, honestly,
you can hire people to do those things.
That's going to take way too much time away from creating, in my opinion. Like, if you're doing all of that instead of creating, I would venture to say that you might be more of an entrepreneur than an artist. And that's fine. Go be a manager for somebody who just wants to sit back and make art all day. If all you're focused on is algorithms and output and content and followers and dollars. Like, so they don't overlap well.
Yeah. Just be yourself, be genuine, and you'll be fine. You'll be fine.
Any other tips? Do you have any like examples of what like horrible networking would be? Other than like stop DMing people asking for opportunities like after the first DM. Like,
right, like a hey girl.
Fucking get to know people.
I don't know what the like music industry equivalent is of a hey girly.
Collabro.
Yeah, like it just doesn't. It doesn't always work. I don't know. I feel like I've said everything that I think. I just think, again, viewing people as dollar signs and transactional and only wanting to get something out of every interaction that you have with somebody. Yeah. I don't think that is the way to approach things. I don't think that's going to get you anywhere. I think it's going to burn out really quickly, and I think people are going to see through your bullshit. So I think doing something like that is not a good idea because, again, word of mouth, it's like you're talking to somebody, they see through your bullshit, they're going to then tell this person who's going to tell that person, and then next thing you know, you're excommunicated, and because everyone knows that you're...
Yeah, reputation is everything.
It is. And being genuine and having integrity is super important. That shit that cannot be bought and cannot be sold. So just stick with doing that. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say.
I will say the music, and that's such a good point. The music industry is so small that I've like commented on somebody's reel before, and then like one of my friends in the industry will DM me and be like, hey, did you hear about this thing that they did? I was like, no. And then guess what? Unfollow them. Never want to work with them. Never want to interact with them.
Depending on the situation.
Yeah. I'm not just going to like unfollow somebody for no reason. But like, word will get around. If you are a piece of shit, if you take advantage of people, if you're creepy to clients, if you're, doing shit you're not supposed to do, if you're just a weird vibe in a session, it will get around and people will stop fucking with you.
Yeah.
It doesn't take, honestly, long at all. Like, weeks. Yeah. And then you're like, why is nobody talking to me? But other than that, that's pretty much it. I know it's probably, if you watch this thinking like, ooh, I'm going to learn all the networking tips and tricks. This ain't that. Sorry.
I think there are tips, but I think tricks is what we don't have. There is no trick.
There's no formula.
Yeah, there's no formula. There's no trick. Don't listen to anybody trying to tell you that there is, because they are lying. They are snake oil salesmen.
Yeah.
That's a lispy word to say.
Snake oil salesman?
Yeah, a lot of S's.
Little tongue twister for you. All right. Well, before we head out, you know what time it is?
Rec time.
Rec time?
Except I'm sticking with my self-care recs. I think I'm going to go down to the, what is it? Grassroots?
Brass tacks?
Is it brass tacks? Grassroots. Those both sayings.
They're both sayings. What are you trying to say?
Like down to the base level, like that.
Let's get down to brass tacks.
Okay. Going down to the brass tacks. Keeping it simple. Drink your water, guys. I know
you already did that.
Forever ago. When's the last time I reminded you guys to drink water?
2 episodes ago.
No. I did sunshine, stretch. What other one is there, huh? Then what other one is there?
That reminds me, this episode is sponsored by Topo Chico.
I wish. Oh, it's so illegal putting it at the end of the video. Actually, I don't know. Is it? Yeah, I think it is. It feels icky either way.
I don't know. It's not, by the way. We make nothing from this podcast, so.
Yeah, we make zilch. Just saying shit ain't even monetized. I was going to cut all that out.
Keep it.
Well, then I don't know. Do you have a recommendation? See?
Yeah, I normally do audio stuff, right?
You do anything, really. You haven't only done audio. One time you tried to recommend our little robot.
Hey, I recommend getting an electric car if you live in a place where you can actually charge it. We just bought a car recently and we're not.
We didn't buy it. It's a lease.
Whatever. We got a new car recently.
Yeah.
We don't drive enough to purchase cars. We drive like less than 10,000 miles a year. But we were not interested in an electric car. But we do own our house and we can charge it in our garage. And the guy at the dealership was like, why would you not do an electric car? And we were just like, I don't know. We didn't want a Tesla for personal reasons.
And I hate the
like one pedal
feel
driving.
Of an electric car. Yeah, I was like, I will throw up if that is how that car feels.
But we found one that was very nice. We were honestly going to get the gas version of this car, and he convinced us to try it. And
we love it.
Now I'm obsessed. Yeah, we drove a lot over the weekend, and now our car's at like 100% just sitting in my garage. It costs, I think total we've had the car for like a month, and we've spent $9 on electricity charging it. So if you're ever in a position to get an electric car, if you're networking good enough to make bank, I will say I don't know if I'd ever do it at an apartment. Like if I had to like wait for chargers and shit.
Yeah.
But if you own a home or you rent a home where you can just like pop it in.
But our neighbors, they don't have a charger at their house yet, and they have an electric car, and they seem to be fine. They just like go to the the Wawa charger, and they do have a Tesla, and they charge it there. So
yeah, don't write off electric cars. Is I guess what I'm trying to say.
Oh, I thought you meant write them off on taxes. I was like, what?
No, I'm not giving tax advice.
Well, if you're in Florida, I don't know how this works in every state, but you do get a tax rebate for getting an electric car, which basically just takes it off the price immediately. But
it did for ours. At some dealerships, you do have to file it. Like at Tesla, you have to file it yourself.
Oh, okay. Well, with our car that we bought, yeah, you automatically got the money off, which that was pretty cool.
But if you're a car person and you're like, electric cars are fucking dumb, we're like vegan environmentalists kind of, and I was still like, I don't know. I was like, they'll have to deal with the gas mileage. It's fine.
We're not I love environmentalists.
Yeah, I mean,
we care about the environment, but that's because we're normal people.
Yeah, fair. But go get yourself an electric car.
Yep.
Other than that, that's it.
I'm not gonna have a wreck then. That'll be the wreck. Because I'm almost running out of time.
She recommends that you go follow us on Instagram at Make Pop Music. Go subscribe to our main channel at Make Pop Music on YouTube, and go to our website, makepopmusic.com, and check out sample packs, preset packs, MIDI packs, courses, all of our free content.
Oh my God. Okay, they get it. Like, subscribe, tell us what you want us to do next in the comments.
Yeah, give us that validation that we need.
Yeah. Thanks guys for watching.
Right. We'll see y'all soon. Until then,
much love.
Peace.